Man, as you know, I'm always on about something. Now, this that I'm getting ready to talk about, this is a very serious subject. And it's a very sensitive subject. But it needs to be talked about. Because I think that my point has some validity. Now, the subject is homosexuality. But today, I'm going to talk about homosexuality in terms of male homosexuality. Because it's my contention that in a society where you allow homosexuality, that many males will be made homosexuals as opposed to choose that as their lifestyle. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, you also will have to bear with me and understand that I'm going to preface this by saying that I have no disrespect for anyone. I just am putting forth my opinion. Now, I need people to be real with me. When I grew up, females were sexually active by the time they were 13, 14 years old. Not necessarily in general, but I would say at least 40%. And maybe even a little higher. It wasn't like it was unheard of for there to be teenage pregnancies. Now, each time that the female was pregnant, very seldom was it from a guy who was her age. As a matter of fact, when I really started getting into knowing what a young lady was, I guess maybe say 14 years old, 15 years old, you start understanding what sex is and what have you, and actually wanting to do it. One of the things I realized, but especially amongst the young girls who were a little more developed for their age, if she was 14 or 15 and she was kind of developed, a 14 or 15-year-old would have had to stand in line behind the 18 and 19-year-olds trying to get to that girl. And it always happened. It was just what it was. Very seldom did you see the 14-year-old guy deflower the 14-year-old girl. Usually the guy who deflowered her was 17, 18, 19 years old, one of the older cats. Now, that to me is the male sexual nature. To want to get the girl. That's his nature. And my contention is a male heterosexual and a male homosexual, their sexual tendencies are the same. I mean, outside of one wanting a woman and one wanting a man, their sexual tendencies are the same. Their drive. So when a man thinks sex, and this is the part that gets sensitive, and I want people to understand, I want to preface it by saying that, this is just how I feel about it. This is what I'm saying. I in no way partake, and I'm not implicating anyone. But a male that's honest, if he looks and sees a fresh, tight-bodied, innocent-looking 14-year-old girl, he'd be lying to you if he said he would rather have sex with a 40-year-old woman. No matter how beautiful that 40-year-old woman is, most men are going to say they want to have sex with that 14-year-old girl. And this is the problem, because men cannot be honest about their sexuality because someone want to lock them up. Now, if the guy, breaks the law, then sure, lock him up. But for him telling you about what is, that shouldn't be a crime. So what I'm telling you, if I'm honest, and if most men are honest, they know if they see a young girl he is attracted to her. He can't say that he's not sexually, because let's face it, if you've heard of a man having sex with a sheep, a horse, a dog, you're gonna tell me that having sex with a 13-year-old girl is out of the question? So don't that's not good thinking. The times have changed. There was a time when men in America even used to take brides at 13 or 14 years old sometimes, right? Now, nowadays, we don't think the same way about that. So people have made laws, right, for this particular society that says, hey, you cannot marry, and certainly we don't want you having sex with a 13-year-old or 14-year-old. So the laws have changed. But you honestly have to ask yourself, what about a man's sexual nature has changed? Nothing. So a man is still down. If you change the laws right now and say, okay, well now a man can have sex and marry a 13-year-old, even a 12-year-old, what you'll find is that you'll start seeing marriages with 12-year-olds, because it would be permissible. And that's all that a man needs. Oh, you mean I can have sex with a 12-year-old? He'll do it. Again, a man will have sex with a sheep, a dog, a goddamn horse. Right? So if you're understanding that, the first thing you realize is that a man is going to have sex. Right? So when I look at a homosexual male, in my mind, if I'm a homosexual male, I would much rather have a 14-year-old boy than a 40-year-old man. Now, some people are going to say, well, I'd rather have the one with the experience, the this and that. Most males would be lying to you if he says, I would rather have a situation where I'm in a sexual encounter, and I want to be in it to where I can't touch the sides or the bottom of the vagina I'm in, or I would like to be in a nice tight vagina. I'm talking real. Most men are going to say they would like to be in a tight vagina for whatever reason. If he wants to have the inexperience where he wants to train the girl, or blah blah blah, if it's his girlfriend or whatever, blah blah blah, he would say in general that he would like to have a young girl as opposed to one that's older. And even if she's in her 30s, I promise you, he would love to have a nice 21-year-old before he would that 30-year-old, in most cases. So I don't understand the thinking in that we would think that, not we, because I don't think it, but how people would think then that you would have a homosexual male who would not be looking at a 12 or 13-year-old innocent boy that knows nothing about that, but he's attracted to him because he's the homosexual. And then with him and his persuasiveness being his age, he could talk that young man into doing something that he necessarily would not do. And now that young man is discombobulated because his hood has been took, his manhood has been took. So now if he, as he comes into his own and thinks that he might wants to date a woman, it's a good chance his mind is going to be discombobulated about which way to go because his manhood was took. See, so now he may find that he can't be the one in the male-female relationship as it is traditionally, right? Being, the leader, the male, the aggressor, right? Because he's been aggressed on and his manhood has been took. So I say that when you let a society have this homosexuality just out there, that leaves the male boy as prey, because it's a given that a male is a sexual predator, but usually you have the male as a sexual predator against females. And in this society, a lot of times now, especially with the laws, and all you have to do is look at the prison record, you will see a lot of men in prison for having sex with kids. And you can check your city registry too, because they have to register in most cases. And you'll find that they live all around you. I challenge you to check it. So if the male is a sexual predator, then it's my position that you're also going to have a male who is aggressive against young boys who would not otherwise be homosexual had they not been turned out, as it were. Right? So, and I've seen this several times, you'll have a social atmosphere, and you may have some guys, let's say you have some high school seniors, college age, maybe freshmen, and even some high school juniors. And you'll have a social environment where you have some young girls there. Same kind of thing, same ages, and then you have some even, a little younger, 14-ish, 15-ish. Most parents are not going to leave those, as we call them, kids, unsupervised. And we know why. But it never appears to people that you could have a group of same ages, males that are homosexuals, and you never think twice about leaving them around male boys. Now, of those guys that are homosexual, I don't see no way that somebody could tell me that if I'm a homosexual that I would not be attracted to a young 13-year-old boy. And maybe since we see how men are with even younger kids, there's no way that you can't tell me that he would not be attracted to boys even younger than 11 or 12. I mean, I could be totally wrong, because I hear people all the time say stuff like, oh, well, gay guys, you don't, and they're talking to heterosexual guys, you don't have to worry about them. They don't, do this, and they won't mess with straight guys, and they won't. And I'm thinking, listen, that would be akin to me saying, this is a heterosexual guy over here. You don't have to worry about him being around your wife. Oh, he's married. He's in a relationship. Don't have to worry about him looking at your wife and, lusting over your wife or whatever. No. That's the stupidest thing I ever heard of. A heterosexual male, if he's married and he's disciplined, he's not going to go the full route, but ain't no way he ain't going to be looking at a female and his mind ain't going to be working. That don't make sense. So now you tell me, if I'm a male and I like males, to me, I'd be like looking at other males, heterosexual or whatever. And then what I would be thinking as a homo, if I saw a heterosexual male that I really was attracted to, I would be thinking, just like a male, that with whatever I come with, I can pull him. So I would then start, like I would a female, pushing up on him. So, of course, an adult male would be able to handle himself however that is. But I don't understand it when people say that, oh, male homos, they don't do this. They're just like any other heterosexual in terms of their sexual drive. It's just that they are after males, right? So what I'm saying, in a nutshell, is when I grew up, there was a saying, and we would say, such and such, that boy will fuck anything that move. And there was quite a bit of them that boy will fuck anything that move. Now, I don't see how somebody think that they can tell me that a male homosexual would not fuck damn near anything that moves. He's no different than a male heterosexual, his nature. So if a male homosexual, just like the male heterosexual, will fuck damn near anything that moves, I don't see why people would not think that young boys that he is, known to love, why he would not go after those young boys if he thought he could get away with it. And even in a lot of cases, just taking the risk, they do it. So this, as I said, is a sensitive subject, but I wanted to mention that because I don't understand that distinction. As I said, I grew up around a bunch of dudes, just straight up dudes, and the subject all the time was pussy, all the time. And so uh, 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 I don't understand how a male homosexual, sometime would be able to suppress his sexual nature, especially when he's a young man, 16, 17, 18, when we know as males, you ain't talking about nothing but your dick from the time you're about 12 on. So I don't understand how a male, a homosexual, would not be as damn horny as a heterosexual, except that his prey is young boys. Because I'm telling you something now. When I was 15, 16 years old, there were plenty of young girls that were younger than that age that really, for me, because I was a young-looking young man, they were 13, 14. They looked older than I did when I was 16 and 17. So sometimes you be talking to a female and then you realize, oh, you 14, boom, And certainly once they got 16, African American, black, whatever you want to call us, African American, a black sister at 16, if you cut her head off, there ain't no way a lot of times you know she was 16 years old. I mean, it's just what it is. But in terms of the male sexuality, I don't see how we separate that. I do not see how we separate that because, again, I want to reiterate, most guys I grew up with, man, they could see a 12-year-old. And let me say this, because I want to tell you about what's real, as vulgar as it is. And a lot of dudes will know what I'm talking about. There was another saying where they used to say, old enough to pee, old enough for me. Now, where the hell did that come from? That came from the thinking that I will fuck anything that moves. Again, how do you separate that a male homo would not be thinking the same way? And my contention is that he's thinking the same way. So that if you allow this to just be open in your society, you better watch your young boys because that's who the target is. And that who really loses in this whole thing. Now, since I really can't get away from it, I'm going to talk briefly about the lesbian. Now, a female that's in a lesbian relationship, and I'll be succinct. Let's say, for instance, that an 18-year-old female is able to coax a 12-year-old female into having sex with her. Okay, so technically the young lady would no longer be a virgin, and she would have had that experience with the older person, and I would not say that it would not have affected her. It may have affected her, and it may continue to affect her for the rest of her life. However, if as a young person she is able, from a mental standpoint, to not get discombobulated, she will be able to have a regular mindset. But on top of that, she still, in any case, has her function with the male. So if she decides that she wants to then have relations with a male, she can go on to have relations with the male, and of course, if she chooses to, have babies. It's a much different relationship for men in that one man has to submit to the other, and that is the issue to me with male homosexuality. When an older male deflowers a younger male, you've taken his manhood from him. the way he thinks about himself. And again, on the flip side of it, a female to another female, you've taken something, but when the male comes after you, it is an entirely different experience. And it is an entirely different experience with the male as well, but it is so much more of a demeaning process. A woman on a woman's process tends to be a loving, a more nurturing type of a relationship, right? A man is making another man submit to him in a way that is totally unnatural, in any unnatural in any way that it could be with him and a woman. See, now when two females are together, there's very little, if anything, that they could do to each other that a male couldn't do, that would be unnatural to them. So a male homosexual society subjects young males to predators, and that's the problem when homosexuality, male homosexuality, is allowed to run amok, I will say. I'm not a homophobic because I'm not afraid of homos. I'm not afraid of their lifestyle. I'm just saying that their lifestyle, I'm repulsed by it. I'm not afraid of it, but I am repulsed by it. But I feel, I really do feel, I feel for the young male, because he's a target, just like the young female is a target for the male. So I don't understand why we wouldn't think that the young man, no matter damn near what age, is going to be a target for the homosexual male. And so, I just make that point because I think that the male takes the male on a totally unnatural course. And he really discombobulates his mind. But that's the way I feel about it. And I just have to say that. I'm sure there'll be plenty of people, especially homosexuals, who will say, oh, it's not so, I wouldn't do that. Yeah, as long as you got a dick, you'll fuck anything that moves damn near. The only thing that stops males from doing so much of the dastardly things that we do sexually is the fear of getting caught going to prison. But again, if you go look at the prison rolls, you'll see that there's still a lot of men doing it because they're locked up behind bars for having sex with kids. So you have to acknowledge that a male homosexual in a society is very, very deviant. Let me just say this also. I went to a conference and we had people from all different cities. And there was a girl there from New Orleans. And she was talking about Hurricane Katrina. And it really gripped me when she started giving her account of some of the things that was happening. Because one of the things that I least expected her to talk about was the females having to safeguard themselves from being raped. She said, especially with the way things were, when the daylight went, when it began to get dusk and dark, and it just put a picture in my mind, because she said all of the ladies would hold themselves together arm in arm like this, hold themselves like that, so that no one would snatch them and rape them. And I thought, oh shit, I didn't think about that at the time, that people would be going through things post a hurricane, and that while people are trying to get themselves together from a hurricane, living in a public place and trying to do all the things, dealing with the hurricane, that no one is thinking about grabbing women when it gets dark and raping them. That's when it really dawned on me again that the male is a sexual predator. It doesn't matter if you're a homo or a heterosexual, you're a sexual predator. And so if we think that we can have male homos in the society that are not going to be predators against our young males, you're not thinking correctly. And all I'm saying is that by us allowing this, what we are doing is making our young men subject to becoming gay, though a lot of them who otherwise would not have, right? And I would love to hear the other sides of it, because I would, be willing to communicate with anyone, because I'm trying to understand now, how does his drive change when he goes from a homo to a heterosexual? Because as I said, all the males damn near that I've experienced, they've always been sexual predators. So I don't understand why a homo would have some kind of suppressed something, you know. Certainly not the homo that's on the giving end. Maybe the one who ends up being the taker or something. But the one on the giving end is a sexual predator. And so I would love to hear from someone who has another perspective on it.